Entrepreneurship, it's all game. The Big Potato Podcast is yours to claim. From startups to scaling up, we cover it all. So don't mess up. Monday nights, don't miss the show with Kendell and Stuart. Your time to grow, listen up, take notes and learn. The Big Potato Podcast, next gen's turn. It's next gen's turn. Next gen's
Welcome
turn.
back to the Big Potato Podcast, you guys. Glad to have you on board. Episode number 2.
We made it.
We made it. We off and running. I mean, thank you guys so much for all the great feedback on episode number 1. And this is episode number 2. Of course, I'm your host, Kendell. My co-host, Stuart, is here. Stuarty, what's going on?
Good night, good night. Good as gold, as my aunt used to say.
Ah, boy.
Yeah, I had to bring all the old phrases. Good as gold, good as gold.
Good as gold. Once it's more than 24 Ks, right?
You know that.
We're looking for that. So tonight is all about episode 2. And tonight we have a very, very interesting conversation for you guys. You know, it's a Big Potato Podcast. And of course, we're talking entrepreneurship. We're talking innovation, business development. And we are really trying to gear you guys up to be a part of our community and really build some business in 2024 and beyond. So we have a special guest. He's already online. We're going to introduce him in a little bit. But any feedback on the last episode that you wanted to touch on, Stuarty? Any feedback, any comments?
Well, a lot of the people, they mention how helpful it was because a lot of the other podcasts, they speak about business in terms of how to register a business, how to do the legal part, registration. But we're really talking about entrepreneurship, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
You know, the business podcast will be like a start to the entire journey. Not even a start because you have to do a lot before you even reach to the registering the business. You have to prove that hypothesis first. But a lot of the other podcasts speak to that. So we basically found a nice niche, and it seems that the people have responded to it. And it's just to go from strength to strength.
Yeah, keep building. I mean, all the entrepreneurs out there, that's the only thing that we could do. Keep building, keep progressing, keep learning from our mistakes, most importantly. So last week, we spoke a lot about the traits of an entrepreneur, characteristics, components, and competencies, and all these things. So be sure if you missed it to go check out episode number 1 at the Big Potato Podcast. So enough said about that. Time to move forward into episode number 2. And tonight, we are going to be talking about entrepreneurship and business development. Guess what? In the media industry and of course, in the entertainment industry as well, but more specifically, so media tonight. And this conversation is going to evolve and go on for a few episodes while going forward into the podcast, but we started it here tonight. All right, so for all those of you all, you might be an entertainer, you might be into the arts, the creative arts, the creativity, you might be into media. This is the one that you definitely don't want to miss. So without further ado, let me introduce our special guest for tonight, Mr. Joel Morris, aka Signal.
Hello to you and the listeners out there to the podcast. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And in case, for some of the people who may not be aware of who Signal to Noise is, Mr. Joel Morris, a.k.a. Signal to Noise, he is a media mogul here in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean and even across the world. So we're talking about over 25 years in the industry as a DJ, radio personality, radio manager, businessman, entrepreneur. Of course, he toured extensively over the years with Chinese laundry music. Also participated in the launching of more than, 6 radio stations. So we're going to definitely be talking about that. And of course, like myself, he assisted in the careers of many persons over the years as well. Currently, he is the head of content, programming and promotions at Guardian Media Limited, Radio and GM Technologies here in Trinidad, Tobago and across the Caribbean. So, I mean, we ain't talking to no small fry here. I mean, this is the man who basically launched Slam 100.5 FM back in 2011. And this is an incredible guy, I know him personally, so I could say that, and it's an incredible story to tell. So Signal, thanks very much for being on tonight again. Before we really jump into the crux of the matter with Signal though, we are going to jump inside of our What Caught Your Eye segment. And for those of y'all who may not know this segment, well, I mean, nobody knows because it's the first time.
Brand new.
Brand new segment, yeah. Stuart. All right? This segment, basically just to say, is entrepreneurial insights on articles and stories of significance that might be trending. Basically.
Just things that might have caught our eye.
Things that basically caught our eye. You know, as an entrepreneur, we spoke a lot last week about reading and about, you know, making sure you research and stay aware of all the things that are happening, right?
All of the trends that are going on, because as an entrepreneur, you have to know the trends to be able to ride the wave.
Come on.
You know, so what I want to talk about this time, for this first, what caught my eye was the Mandolin situation. Many people might be familiar with Mandolin, but during the COVID, there was a company called Mandolin which had formed, which was launched. Sorry, it was launched on the 20th of June, right in the peak of COVID. So this company was a live stream concert platform. So you remember, everything was locked down. You couldn't go to the concerts at all. So place your mind back to Versus. Remember, everyone had a verse, right? So this platform, Mandolin, came on the scene, saw a need, saw a problem to solve, as any good entrepreneur will do, and solve it with this live stream concert platform. But the only challenge was that COVID came and went. Well, people might say it hasn't gone anywhere as yet, but the threat of COVID and the lockdown scenario, that whole thing, that whole social distancing nightmare, that has gone its way. So is the problem still there that needed to be solved initially? Long story short, as they say, 3 years later, the company started in 2020, but now in 2023, last year, the company had to shut down after 4 rounds of funding. They tried to get the 4th round and they weren't successful, and they had to shut down the company. I mean, the company reached a $22 million valuation. So it was
That's
like
welcome.
No. It was a bright flame that just burnt out quickly.
So, I mean, it went straight up peak. And then immediately dipped.
Immediately, because they weren't able to pivot. When the problem that they were trying to solve disappeared, they weren't able to pivot into something else. They tried different things, but nothing was able to really salvage the operation. So that's what really caught my eye.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an interesting situation. And my takeaway from that is really the pivoting and trying to understand, because you would have invested a lot in infrastructure and technology and all these things to get that business up and running, to reach the $22 million valuation, US dollars, of course, and then suddenly crash. You know, definitely something within the strategy, I believe, probably didn't work out. And I know that they did try to do some pivoting and try some other avenues, some other monetary schemes, but it didn't work out for them.
They tried some other things, like for instance, they tried to add some digital features onto the actual live concerts. But
right.
I mean, thinking about myself, when the lockdowns were over, if they throw a concert, I would be fully engaged in the live experience. I don't need the digital anymore. I remember we were coming out of the lockdown, so we wanted to escape that reality of everything being streamed, everything being digital. We wanted to see some real things, feel some real things, see some real people, hang out in some real parties. So basically it was just about, you know, whether they were able to be agile and flexible enough to steady the ship. They weren't. Any thoughts about this, Joel? Sorry, Signal?
Yeah, I mean, I read what you guys are saying. You know, I believe that, you know, they did not really, that was a really unpredictable time for the world. And their growth strategy probably did not include looking forward to the next 10 years or so, you know. They saw an opportunity and they took it, maybe not thinking that far ahead. And maybe they did think that far ahead. And maybe in terms of their strategy, what they projected it was not the reality coming out of the pandemic, you know. So it's there are a lot of companies that really went through a similar situation. They're not the only company, you know. And one of the interesting things that I read over the years post-pandemic was how a lot of companies were, at one point, they were trying to maintain their work from home scenario, And then later on, as the months passed and the year passed, they wanted workers to come back out.
To come back, yes. And if you look at the value of the commercial real estate, because of that decision, it's a trickle down.
It is. It is a trickle down, I mean, I would have thought that a company would have been experiencing savings on electricity, on space, found other things to do, rent the space and so on. It would have recognized that there is an opportunity for persons to work at home. Is the productivity high? Is it low? Is it medium productivity? And if it's low, what can they do to really raise the productivity from working at home? Because it has its advantages and disadvantages,
Certainly.
Correct.
So I think what at that point, a proper study was not initiated, and there were lots of companies that really took advantage of the pandemic, rode the wave of the 2 years and had people being home and without thinking about what's next.
Yeah, and I mean, just to wrap up on that point, Kendell and Stuart, I believe that the thinking in terms of long-term thinking, long-term planning, with revisiting your plan constantly is what's coming up and standing out to me, especially as an entrepreneur. These are the things that you really need to do at all points in time. So I'll just let you guys know what caught my eye as well. It's not along the line of live streaming, but it is along the lines of something everybody knows about. And I came across this article on Inc.com in the marketing section, a contribution brought by Steve Strauss on January 18th of this year. And it says it's now full steam ahead for small businesses to use Mickey Mouse. Guess what? Mickey Mouse, the Steamboat Willie version, you could Google that. That's the 1928 version of Mickey Mouse. Only that version, let me specify, actually is in free domain right now. What does free domain mean? It means that the IP on the 1928 version of Mickey Mouse has expired, right? Disney would have renewed it a number of times over the years, and now 95 years or so later, it has finally expired. It's in free domain. What does this mean for small businesses and entrepreneurs? You can actually use that image and likeness of it to build your own business. You can make merchandise. Actually, there are companies already making merchandise and selling it very successfully. One YouTube channel, for example, is showing the cartoon in its entirety. So you're talking about this is no small fry. It is Mickey Mouse 1928 version. Disney. This is what basically launched off Disney back in 1928. Now in free domain, and I mean, this YouTube channel that for one example, that is showing the cartoon in its entirety, they have already surpassed 1 million views. So as I said, people making merchandise. There's an AI tool specifically for this that is making different cuts of Mickey Mouse. So, I mean, lots of opportunity where that is concerned. What does this mean for entrepreneurs, you think?
Well, I am a bit worried, only because I've seen what other people have done with the IP that is in the free domain at the right in time. They tend to just rush out and try to do a quick cash, a quick cash grab with any project. I think Winnie the Pooh was the last one. Winnie the Pooh was
he's a horror.
And he's a horror. So that is the only thing. I just hate the line of the direction that these people tend to go in with it. But I guess you don't own anything forever. You might have your idea, but 95 years is a long time to capitalize on it. Some people will actually do some iterations of it so that they will keep the IP still protected.
Yeah.
Protected. So they have ways to go about it, but at the end of the day, that version of Mickey Mouse, I don't think Disney really uses it in anything again.
So all the entrepreneurs do all they can refresh it and revamp
Make it popular again.
Anything on that, Signal?
Well, I mean, my take on it is more of a question,
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you own your stuff forever? That's my question.
Well, you should tell us. I know you know a lot about IP, yeah?
Well, I know something about it.
Yeah,
I'm not the total expert, but I'm just saying that, this expiry date on ownership of something. I mean, I could understand instruments or products that are very crucial or critical to the world, that you would release the IP on it. And I know a lot of that has happened over the internet and other things and so on. But why can't somebody own something for life? They created it.
I agree.
But it's life plus, right? It's 95 years.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but what about residual income
Yeah.
for the family and the generations?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not
And all
going
of that, the
to
estate,
Yeah.
and so on. That is something that you have to consider. I mean, if I were to create something that would change the world right now or make a difference, I would like to know at some point that my generations down my line would benefit from it. Even if I had to release some IP, not 100%, if you know what I'm saying, if you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
definitely so. But that
So
means that they could enjoy.
Yeah, my take is more of a question and more of a concern in terms of that,
And I appreciate that.
It's like we put in 40, 50 years developing a product.
Exactly.
And on their 50th, then or what 50th birthdays when they actually, the product has mushroomed into what it's supposed to be. Right? I mean, and you telling me now that after 95 years, my generation, my bloodline can't benefit from it. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely one that we would bring up with the IP lawyers and the IP people when we have them on, because we have them in line. We lining them up strategically right now going down. So I hope that, when we reach that episode, that question is one that I've noted, and definitely we hope to get some feedback on that from those people. But I tend to agree with your question and your point of view. But let me just remind the entrepreneurs out there, this is only for the 1928 version, Steamboat Willie of Mickey Mouse, okay? Do not go and use the new version or the recent or present version of Mickey Mouse. You might run yourself into some problems. But the key takeaway for me for entrepreneurs and business development people is really to understand, as Signal mentioned, your IP, as Stuart mentioned as well, a very crucial point in terms of your ownership, and really how you're valuing that over time. And even when it's out of your hands, what could happen to it? What could happen to that brand or that product when the IP is over? So yes, there are benefits. You can benefit from it. And there are things going into free domain all the time, which are very popular. So you need to keep your eyes on that as an entrepreneur. Environmental scanning is very important. All right, so we'll wrap up the What Caught Your Eye segment there. I think we went a little over, but these couple stories were very interesting. Get familiar with this segment. We're going to be doing it on every show. And we take a short break now. This segment is brought to you by IBOMAQ. Whether you're seeking guidance or solutions for your business, we are here to help. Contact us via IBOMAQ868@gmail.com. That's IBOMAQ. 868@gmail.com, and let's discuss how we can collaborate for your success. Of course, we have a limited time offer, 1 hour free consultation for your business, for your ideas, and for your growth. So check it out. Right. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in. Once again, we have Mr. Joel Morris, Signal to Noise. He is here with us tonight on the Big Potato Podcast. That's right. Episode 2. We're talking entrepreneurship and business development, particularly in the media industry. And I mean, we must have a media mogul on still to talk about something like this.
You have to bring on one of the goats.
Come on.
One of the goats.
Come on, one time. And we don't mean goat in a bad way. We mean greatest of all time.
All time.
All right? So
you guys make me feel so special.
Oh, sure, I mean, come down, man, like a bite up shilling, as we say in Trinidad, man. Come on. So, Signal, how exactly did you get into entrepreneurship, and tell us a little bit about your journey?
It's a really interesting story. It's an interesting journey. It really started with music, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Having a love for music as a young person, a young boy, a little boy, listening to music, always in love with it, listening to the radio. Because in those days, radio was it. There wasn't anything else, radio, television. I don't think there was anything else really. And, I would spend hours listening to the radio, liking the music and so on. And as I grew older, I guess I started to discover what DJing was. what announcing was and so on. So from that young age, I was always listening to guys like Rennie Bishop, Jim Sutherland. Those guys were the gurus at the time of the radio business. This boy Dave Elcock and many others that are too numerous to mention right now. I was fascinated by what they were doing. And in those days, you could not see what was happening in the studio. There was no live stream, radio stream and those things. So you had to imagine what was happening inside those radio station studios,
Right.
And these guys had a way of painting a picture for you through words. Because that's what it is, It's building your imagination and stretching that imagination through words, that you start to wonder, well, what's really happening in there? Whether it's a laugh, whether it's a discussion about a situation and so on and what. And I was always fascinated by that, And when I started getting into music, I met some guys who had a basement and they were DJs much older than me. And I used to go there and just look at them, DJ, and wonder if I could ever do that, if they will ever give me an opportunity to touch those tools. Those days were records, CD wasn't invented yet, digital wasn't a big thing. And so it was all analog. And I started learning to DJ by going with a friend of mine, another friend of his, on weekends and playing music. And that was my first entrance into that whole field of entertainment, And during the years, I got better at it. There was a guy who was selling some turntables. I begged my dad to buy me those turntables. He bought me those turntables. And when my mom saw that, she bought me a little mixer. And we had a stereo at home, obviously. So we used to plug it into the stereo and just play music and mix and stuff and so on. And, as I got better at it, we started doing house parties. Some friends got together. Some of them would have equipment. I would have turntables. The guys would have speakers. And so we come together. We were only doing house parties, birthday parties, that kind of stuff and so on. That's very young too,
Right.
And I think I was around, I can't remember what age, maybe around 18 or 19 or somewhere there. And I was so good at it. And I used to go to a place called Mario Studio. It wasn't Downtown Outlaws yet. You will know it as Downtown Outlaws now.
Right.
Right? Now, that place, Downtown Outlaws, they developed most of the top talent, DJ talent and stuff in this country. A lot of people don't know that, And while being there and doing these mixes, you're meeting guys like General Grant and those guys and so on and whatnot. These gentlemen in Chinese laundry, they just started a unit. They used to come there and hear me mix all the time and so on. And they used to, they were fascinated by it. And they would always ask me to come and join them. And I would say no, because for me at that point, it was a hobby. It wasn't really what I wanted to do with my life,
Right.
I really liked it as fun and so on. And they opened this little record store on Trowbridge Road, which is now that place they call 139 Trowbridge, where they have the food.
Woodbrook Yard.
Woodbrook Yard, right.
Free promo there.
And whenever I go there to buy records, they would talk to me and tell me, they have a dream and this is a dream of theirs or whatever. And one day I went, life is so strange. I went to my dad and I said, Dad, these guys, they keep asking me about this, this DJ thing and launching this DJ unit or whatever and so on. And, I said, what do you think? He said, well, you're young, you have time on your side. If you feel the need to try it, give it a year, 2 years, see what happens. And if you don't like it, well, you can easily get out of it and do something else, Mm-hmm. And those words stuck with me, and I went back to them and I said, okay, I'll do it. And that was where Signal to Noise was born. Right away, we decided to get a logo, find a name, all those things and so on. Now, at that point, we used to do these small parties, intimate parties in yards, backyard and those things, backyard parties were the thing in those days, And what I liked about that team is that they weren't just DJs having fun playing behind a plant, doing a little birthday party. They actually were developing a business.
Right.
They opened a record store, and the record store when I joined was small. They had about 4 records on the floor and 2 tape decks.
Wow.
Had fun. Yeah, and started bringing in the music. And so on, and then it grew. We started doing these mixtapes, and these mixtapes became very popular. We bought more decks. We bought more records. We expanded it because we were in one room in the house. And then we started to expand into the other room in the house and so on, all through independent entrepreneurship behavior,
Right.
And we started traveling to buy music, bringing the music back. We became very popular in terms of that because people used to hunt down the music. We must have these new hits first, to be able to sell it and stuff. And we produced, through the mixtapes, we produced a tape called Dub 27. Dub 27, at the time, the organization was sort of like semi-exclusive, if you want to call it that. We had these special parties, invitation only type kind of stuff. And we decided, in order to go national, we needed to expand. And we created this tape called Dub 27, and we put a lot of DJs on it and so on. And it became so popular around the country. And in those days, it was the Maxi Taxi. And the Maxi Taxi used to play all these tapes and so on. It became very popular. The outfit now started to become national, So we moved out of that space of being a little intimate DJ group more into the national stage. And then we used to have these small parties, and we decided one year we couldn't have those small parties anymore because, people were cramming to try and get in, and they wanted to have an opportunity to experience what we do. So we decided to launch one year with a party called Colors, a big one, in I think WWT Hall and so on. And that party brought more nationalism to us. I mean, a lot of the kids who would buy our tapes were in colleges in the States, all over America and Europe and stuff. So they would come home for the holidays and buy boxes and carry it back and so on. And they even send their parents to the store to buy the tapes and ship it for them and so on. They used to sell it. So those are some of the things that really built us as an organization, and as a business. So I really had an experience of building business from the ground up, starting in that direction. And after a few years of that, because we built some exclusive parties to some name brand parties, the themes and stuff were really creative. We used to have one called the puzzle. You have to solve the puzzle to get to the venue, all kinds of different things. And at one point, copyright was coming into Trinidad and Tobago, and they wanted to have more input into controlling the rights of the artists and so on. And they started coming down in these mixtapes and stuff. And at the same time, we got an opportunity. That this is my first entrance into radio now. And let me tell you, it wasn't a plan. It was a dream, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
I didn't plan to say, well, okay, I'll move from this step to that step, right? But I guess things lined up because of where we were heading and what was happening at the time. So we got this opportunity for an overnight radio gig on 951 FM in the 90s. That time, 951 was situated on Marvel Road, where the GenZ would be now, in back there.
Yes.
And we started this overnight, but when we got the overnight, we said to them, why not do this for the entire week? Because they offered us a Friday night, which was 12 midnight to 6 a.m. in the morning. We said, you could do this for more DJs, and they decided to do it. So we brought a few DJs during the week. There was Tweez, there was Johnny Q, Just Jace, a few others, and so on. But strange enough, when the radio survey was done, at the end of that period, our show was the number one show in the entire radio station.
And it's 12 to 6.
12 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Overnight.
Wow.
Well, there was major panic. It's like, we knew already through what we were doing with our events and stuff that we had a strong following. Remember, our market was the youth market. And at that time, there was there was no other entity really targeting the youth market like that. So again, we saw as an entrepreneur unit, we saw an opportunity, you know, and we took advantage of it. So when we found out about it, they panicked because they felt that, you know, these are young guys here. They're not just, these guys are different. These guys are not just playing music. These guys are running a business, you know. They have sort of like a business plan. They're executing that plan. They started with one record store. They have 2 record stores. They started importing music, selling it in America. You know, they have these huge events and so on, you know, and it is a business, basically. And they kept it from us. But some of the other guys in there, some of the other announcers and presenters, they came and they told us, because we were close with them, a lot of them would buy music from us and so on. And that was really our first entrance into radio, you know?
Right.
And right. So that's now the transition into media.
Perfect. And I'm glad you mentioned that transition into media, you know, signal, because I think the story basically tells itself from there. Transitioning into media, from working overnight, it being a dream, treating it like a business, using your creativity, spotting opportunity, all these entrepreneurial traits really, and then transitioning now, tell us a bit more of it being more of a media type, I guess, business vision from that point on.
Yeah. So the person who was responsible for bringing us on radio initially was Louis Singh. I'm sure you would know him.
Yes.
He was his former mayor and so on there. A man who is well respected in the entertainment media circles and so on. He has made major contributions. So he was the marketing manager, I believe, then at 9-5. And then they put him in charge of a company called, what was it called at the time? I think it was NBN. It's now TTT, back to TTT, right? But it was NBN at the time. And Louis, in his wisdom, decided that, you know, here are these guys who has this huge following, having these huge events, doing all this. Why not create a radio station for their following? And Louis Singh decided that he wanted to launch the first youth radio station in the country, which was 98.9 FM. So in preparation for launching that, and there were a lot of things happening at the time with that, as I said, copyright was becoming very strict. You know, they were enforcing the laws, the legislation and so on with respect to pirating these tapes, these mixtapes and so on. And we created an avenue for us. He hadn't even recognized that, you know, for us to continue showcasing our music and our talent to the country legally without having to sell these tapes. So he came with an offer to launch this 98.9. And at the time, this Kiskini Caravan was also now coming up. Robert Amar had launched his Kiskini studio, and he was now producing artists. And the artists at the time is Sister Run and General Grant and the boys, the Kindred, you know, Edo Rankin and so on. You know, and the big producer at the time, or the big producer with the potential, was Shell Shock.
Shell Shock, yes.
So a lot was happening. It's almost like a evolution taking place, you know, around that period of time. And we launched 98.9, and that's where I actually started my radio training.
Right.
Inside the NBN building, where they would give me courses, they would give me sessions, they would teach me about things that I shouldn't even know from the technical side of it. What is a transmitter? What is a repeater? Why it is important? What is a radio clock? How the clock works? You know, producing for media, producing for radio, and so on. And, you know, they found it to be so interesting. I was so deeply interested in all of that. I used to ask them, what next? What next? What next?
Right.
And at one point, the lecturer said to me, he said, you know, we can't teach you anything else. I said, why? You know, he said, because the rest now is up to you. We teach you the fundamentals. We teach you the basics, right? It's up to your creativity, your imagination, and your sense of business to take this further, you know. And having said that, I started creating my own. I mean, that station, I was the production guy. I produced all the ads, all the stingers, all the promos, everything for that station. I contributed in naming shows. I even started on a show, within a short period, I started training other personnel as to I was this well-experienced presenter on the air, and so on. But I think what they loved about us too is the difference we brought to radio and media at the time, because media at that time was very prim and proper and governed by very small. Yeah. I remember walking into that building sometimes and there was a lot of disrespect because they did not respect us as experienced media personalities because we did not go to school in Atlanta and learn how to present radio and develop that mid-Atlantic voice that you need to have and all these things. And in those days, you cannot get on radio without taking those courses, right?
Right.
So there was a lot of disrespect for us. I used to walk into that building, say good morning. Some of them turn up their face. They don't say hello. It was a lot of pressure.
Disrupting
number one.
Yeah, basically you're disrupting not only the programming, but when they realized that you also had the entrepreneurial values, traits, and competencies.
They become a real threat.
A real threat because, this guy is a disruptor. And actually, that's kind of where I want to swing it right now, Signal. In terms of that disruption, learning all those things, building your capacity in media and understanding it behind the scenes and all the inner workings and building that knowledge base as an entrepreneur. We spoke a lot about that in our last episode, and this is testimony to that. And really swinging the pendulum now. Let's fast forward a couple of years. Like, how did this transition into you developing your own brand in terms of Slam 100.5 FM? If we could touch on that just for a couple of minutes and understand.
Yeah. Sure, I'll take you through the middle of it first because there was a entrepreneurial part of me that a lot of people know. I don't know if you would know of it, Kendell, is when I left 96.1. I decided to come out of media.
Right.
And I launched my own company called Noise Productions Limited and Wonderland Limited and so on. Mm-hmm. Right. And that company was actually producing advertising and production work and marketing. Because I had a business partner. She was an expert in marketing and so on. So we made a good pair. And we actually produced a lot of marketing and promotions for major companies. Mm-hmm. We did part of the Miss Universe pageant. We did part of Cricket World Cup. We used to do major companies. We did stuff for NCC, for Digicel at the time, and so on. So the company was doing well. And one of the things that was always my dream in getting out of media at that point was owning my own media. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you that period of my life of having my own company really taught me a lot in terms of entrepreneurship. I thought I knew a lot, not going my own business.
It's not a walk the walk though.
When I started to walk the walk, it was an entirely different thing. I did not anticipate it would be so challenging, And, we struggled to survive at one period. But because I was quite popular at the time and I had good relationships and networking, I was able to draw in business, and my business partner too was well networked as well. We did work even in Barbados. We used to work for the Barbados government for a lot of companies and so on. So we survived. But during that period, I was always in pursuit of my license. The point I'm making though is when I got the license, right? They gave out maybe about 12 or 13 licenses. Now, in those days, radio licenses was very difficult to get. You had to do all kinds of things, get a contact, whatever, and so on. And this minister came in. He was all business, and he decided to liberalize this thing. He said, it's not making any sense. Let us give out the licenses, charge them a fee, because you don't own the license. You're paying out a fee, right, to lease the license. And you're governed by the rules of the Telecommunications Authority, right?
Right.
So he said, let us give out these licenses and charge them. If they can't meet their payments, let's take it back and give it to somebody else.
Sounds simple.
So so they gave out these 13 licenses. So I started to scratch my head and I was saying, wow, I didn't think they would give out so many licenses. I thought, maybe one or two and so on. So I started to question what is going to happen to the business because here you have all these licenses coming out. Nobody's trained. There aren't a lot of people trained to manage radio. At that time, there were no courses, all of that, right? So what people had to do was take people who they felt had some potential,
right,
and put them on the air, right? And then give them other jobs within the media industry and so on. So I got the license. I sat down with a lot of partners and so on, looking at opportunities for business partnerships and whatnot and so on. And at one point I said to myself, this isn't making any sense right now. Maybe what I need to do is take a step back and really see where the market go. So I decided to broker a different deal with Anthony Harford, rest his soul. If you know who Anthony Harford was.
Yes.
He was a media mogul as well, but also he was a sport juggernaut.
Horse racer.
And so, yeah, right. And he wanted to do a jazz station. And he came to me and he convinced me to do this jazz station. And I said to him, Harford, why are you doing a jazz station? Your expertise is sport. You could pick up the phone and literally call anybody and get money. Get somebody to buy advertising for you and so on. But passion is a different thing, right? So he had a passion for the jazz. So I said to him, okay, let's do the jazz. So we set up everything and we launched this jazz station. The station suffered for like 5 years. We tried to get it going because we realize now that the market is too small.
Exactly.
Right? That jazz market, it doesn't have sufficient listeners to really generate the revenue that we need to generate with it. So after 5 years of running it, I decided, this not making any sense. And he was in charge of it more than I was. I was still running the production and marketing company. But at that time, I was still interested in media. So everywhere I travel, everywhere I go, I would observe the development of media, what was happening. And at the time, what was happening was digital media was now coming into its own. It started with Facebook, MySpace, and those things. And what I realized over the years is that a lot of those young kids started streaming. Well, it was a streamer at the time. I think it was just listening to it and so on. But they developed a taste for consuming their music online as opposed to traditional media, right? And at the time was downloads, I believe.
Yep.
So I was observing this, and I was also observing the social media space because there was a lot happening with that as well. And after the 5 years, I decided, I feel I want to get back into media. And about 3 weeks after I just said that to myself, I got a call from a gentleman on Guardian Media by the name of Steve Dipter, right?
Okay. Yes, I know Steve.
Right? And he called me and he said, Signal, what you doing with that license? You're doing something that making sense with that. Come, let's have a conversation, and so on. I said, okay. And we had a conversation and we decided that maybe I could launch this station in collaboration with them. And, at that time I was very well developed, understood business very well, and so on. So I looked at all the opportunities, the pros and the cons. I did a full SWOT analysis of the advantages and disadvantages, the opportunities and stuff for this business with them, right? Looking at the market, looking at the revenue in the market, the potential for revenue, which demographic may be the best demographic to target. So it wasn't just about youth and those things that I love. She was looking at what's the best business opportunity, what's the best positioning for this, and so on. So
real business planning.
Yes. So we decided, and then joining them to their media part of IBOMAQ, right? We sat down and we looked at the market and we realized within their company, what they did not have was a youth urban radio station. And at the time, the youth urban market had the most revenue, right? Had the opportunity for the most revenue generation in that market. What they didn't have, again, is they didn't know how to set it up, how to launch it, how to build it, how to manage it. They knew nothing about that market.
Wow.
Right? So the deal was to collaborate with me and have me build it, right? And I think what made it very successful, to be honest, is the fact that when we started it, it was also in its own space, sort of separated from the company, so that entrepreneurial spirit and innovation and thing could have flourished, because the company at the time was stuck in an era. This new youth urban station could not merge with at the time. So we sort of launched it as a separate entity, having its own staff, having its own personnel, right? That would not interrupt, so that the company would not interrupt the innovation.
Right.
That was necessary for that youth market. So it's like you saying to yourself, now, look, I have a car company, and my car company is gas and whatever and so on. But you know what? Here's a little startup company down the road there that has the potential, and they are operating in this new market of EV, electric vehicles and hydrogen or whatever it is. And you know what? I want to buy into this company, but I need to give them an opportunity to continue to grow. So I'm almost like a venture capitalist, I'm almost like an investor, right? That invested in it, but not interfering with it. So think of it like how when Facebook bought WhatsApp.
WhatsApp, right.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's like Signal, you're going to take this podcast from us. So yeah. You come on here, you're just spitting knowledge here tonight for all the entrepreneurs locked on.
It's one of the good, Signal.
Yeah, we're going on. I mean, we have a whole list of stuff here thinking that, we would need to prompt the conversation. Even when we spoke earlier, you were like, so you're going to lead on, but you have taken the lead, and you're just basically ticking off on my list right now all the things that you wanted to cover in terms of entrepreneurship and business development. So, I mean, fantastic. And that's the story leading up to Slam. So I think now is a great time to take a very short break and come back with more. This segment is brought to you by On The Go TT. That's On The Go TT. Virtual shopping mall available on iOS and Android. Download today and shop for electronics, books, hardware items, and so much more. Check it out. Download and shop.
The message I really was trying to send while I keep creating WhatsApp scenario too is that if you have an idea or product or an innovative piece of strategy or something, right, that has growth potential, and you have investors interested, right, do not let them come into your business and turn it into something else.
Keep talking on that, Signal, because that is actually one of the key points that we want to talk about. How to package yourself as the entrepreneur with this great idea for investors to be interested and to come in. And I mean, definitely along those lines. You don't want the investor to come in and bring red tape, bureaucracy, bring a different mentality, a different dream, a different vision from you. So tell us a little bit about that in terms of attracting that investment.
Well, I think investors are always interested in anything that's growing and has the potential to make money, right? And so on. But I believe when you get to that stage of attracting the investment, you have to determine, you have to see the future of the business. And investors have to buy into that future, not their future, your future. What they bring is experience, management skill, other skills that you may not possess, right? That would assist in actually structuring the business properly, right? And maybe some networking skills that they may have, and networking ability to increase the credibility or the value of the business itself.
And the idea, right?
They bring that entire organization to your company to build more competency. More, right.
Correct.
So that now you'll be able to grow as an entrepreneur.
Exactly so, right? But I think the challenge with some entrepreneurs is they're not really, because of the inexperience in certain things, they don't know at what point to say, I don't want to go in this direction. You know, sometimes a company may come into your business and overpower, take control of it and overpower the business and actually change the whole business strategy. I saw that to some extent with Apple at some point with Steve Jobs, right? When he left Apple, and Apple was going in a different direction and he had to come back into Apple. And when he came back to Apple is when Apple started to flourish again. And when he came in, he didn't ask for a salary. He just wanted stock options. And he started with, remember the IBOMAQ, that powerful young computer and so on. And that's when he started building Apple again. So again, I think entrepreneurs need to understand to some extent their worth and their value and their vision. But I also feel that investors need to also be able to understand it as well and buy into that vision and sort of allow the entrepreneur, the individual to continue to build it and grow it with their guidance and direction,
Well, as I said, it's your dream, right? So they can't come and supersede you and take over. It's your dream. So even if they were to implement what they wanted to implement without your vision, it won't be the same product and it mightn't have the same, let's just say it might have a higher risk of failure because all businesses will have a risk of failure. So they must, as I said it before, they must bring in their organizational skills to add to your vision because it's your vision and you have the courage and you doing the pursuit behind it and you've brought them into your team. They came into your team because they saw your vision. So
yes,
it's very important, as I said, for the entrepreneurs to maintain that stance. I mean, it's very difficult as well because if you're an entrepreneur with a little bit of capital and some huge conglomerate approaches you to make investments, some people don't even know the value of the company.
You see that Shark Tank all the time.
Yeah, you don't know the value, so someone will come and give you $10,000 for 50% of your company and say, yeah,
let's go.
And now you have no leverage to be able to bring on new investors. You're in a mess. So it's very important that I said that.
Yeah, that is correct, And Kendell, you hit the nail on the head with Shark Tank, and there are lots of others out there like that,
Yeah. The sharks in the water,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's good that we have reached to this point. We just have a couple more things that we want to cover, and we're going to cover that right after this very short break. Understand how we moved from slavery to independence, learn the story of our pan, how it created the Trini, and how it was leveraged for our independence. From Ibadan to Helyard. Get your copy today. And thanks so much to Lime Juve. Book your packages for the biggest lime on the road, Juve Morning, via the On-the-Go app or Lime Juve social media. So welcome back to the Big Potato Podcast, you guys. Joel Morris is on the show tonight. Yours truly, Kendell. I'm here, Stuart is here, and we're having a lovely discussion. We've heard so much from Signal to Noise about his entrepreneurial journey, starting really and truly from in his home, really just making mixes, and how he has graduated and elevated through media and entertainment to really being the mogul that he is right now in terms of a business manager, station manager, somebody who has launched multiple stations, and it all would have really started with a hobby, right? And something that he enjoyed. So entrepreneurs, I know you're out there listening. Your business can start and should start with something that you like doing, you enjoy. It's a hobby. He enjoyed playing music. I know he's really, in charge of some radio stations.
Where it was a hobby that was supported by his friends and his family, and he put a team around himself of other DJs that shared a vision, also shared similar hobbies, and they were able to make it work. It was very, very key gems he's dropping right now? Key information.
Gems, you understand that? Using the creativity and scanning for opportunities really was pivotal in his journey, even outside of radio and media, where he launched his own business, Noise Productions, and that was more into marketing and that sort of thing. So, Signal, thanks very much. And just a couple of things before we end off.
I just learned so much from you. It's adding to the conversation we had last episode 1. But for instance, I did some research obviously for this episode. So I was looking at when you initially started, your differentiator would have been the mix. You know, you were bringing in different sounds of music, different genres of music to the radio station, which you thought was lacking in the other radio stations. And you thought that might differentiate you and might be an innovative way to grow your audience. That has been copied in terms of people. In the same article, they said that you realize people quickly brought on those genres as well to their station. So how were you able to successfully navigate that and pivot from there? Because now you're moving from a situation of, let's say, short-term competitive advantage to competitive parity. So where is your differentiator? Well, you don't have to give me the full secret, but you know, how are you able to think it through?
And to sustain to this point.
Well, my differentiator, the first thing is that part of my entire strategy was not just built on the music alone. It was also built on the technology. Right. And it was also built on the personalities and the generational difference. So when I started with that mix of music, I actually did my research, as I was saying, because I had the opportunity to travel over the 5 years of having the marketing company and observing what was happening in the market, right? And I realized that the music was fusing. It was a fusion of pop mixed with R&B, mixed with dance and so on and whatnot. And that was considered urban music or mainstream music at the time. And the stations in Trinidad, my competitors, weren't actually representing that. Like, they weren't aware, like they were sleeping or something. So the music was one part of it, yes. But the other differentiator was the mix of talent that I hired. I knew that it would take me 3 to 5 years to build this station. I knew that I was targeting a younger generation, a different generation to my competitors. And I knew it would take time. So in my study, I hired a few people and then I went around with them and they took me to see others. Now, at that time, people were hiring DJs with well mixing skills and announcers with nice tone voices and stuff and so on. I was looking at that, yes, but I was also looking at the potential of the following that the person had and the potential to increase that following. So I walked around and I moved around and I went to different parties. I went to see Lurbs and Aswad. And when they played, I went to 4 or 5 parties with them to see how they were growing. And so on the following they were developing. I went to see Destruction Sound, which is Ramon and then his cousin. And all over they were playing and stuff. And I followed them for a while and so on. And then I realized, look, yes, these guys have the potential to grow. When I hired Second Star, I wasn't as an artist. He was still a young, they had a DJ group with him and Caleb. What was the name of that group? You remember, Kendell?
Vibes Fusion International.
Right. And I saw them. It was, the club was, this club at the time where the restaurant is the area. Yep. Nightclub. And they had a huge event packed. And I was like, what is this here? Who are these guys? You know? And so on. So I was really looking at the generational difference too, and knowing that it would take some time to build my brand. You're dealing with mass audience and so on. They will never love you overnight. And that generation will have to grow with my talent and the music and all those things. So it was almost like operating in a safe space, using a strategy that the others not really thinking about, because they still have their personalities and so on. I did my research on these other stations. So my strategy was to exploit their weaknesses, fill that gap.
Flexibility to do it.
Right? Yeah. And so on. And then the technology, as I said, that generation started with Facebook and then Instagram came in right after. So we were heavily pushing out content on the social media. And so on. And now we are at 106,000 fans on Instagram and 800,000 fans on Facebook, right? And that is all due to the promotions and the different things we kept doing on social media and that audience growing with us and so on. So the strategy involved many different things. It wasn't just the music. The music was just one part of it. And it was a long-term strategy, really, to build a brand. We hired talent and we grew talent, but we also took some experienced talent as well. A 5-star Keel and a few others, Jaiga and so on. But we brought on new talent and grew them. Jared Penny, right? He was trained by us. He knew nothing about media, right? Now he's a youth, what we call one of the major influencers of that youth.
Well, he's major now,
right? Correct. Travis Wool is the other one I brought in, that 15 years old as a DJ. And I asked his mother gave us permission. She sent a letter for it. Yeah, we started training him during Friday nights and Saturday mornings because he had school, right? And so on. He's a big time producer now. And we could call a lot of others, Libs, all of them, all of those guys grew with the station and really became huge personalities. Chris Kennedy used to come on line with Travis. He was never even on the air. He was just a Travis friend coming to line in the studio, you know? And then he started getting some overnight shifts and so on. He used to sleep in our sleeping bag sometimes.
Don't wait him out like that. Don't do him like that. Don't do him dirty like that.
Sorry.
I mean, we loving the insights. We loving the insights, and a lot of audience know these people.
Yeah. So the point I'm making is that the strategy, right, my differentiator, as you say, my USP, my point, and my difference.
Talking things, man.
Yeah, was really a series of things, which is why we coined the theme or the slogan for the station, Progressive Urban, right? Progressive Urban meaning that, look, we wanted to remain in the urban category for ratings purposes and consumer purposes and so on, right? So we could not say mainstream pop and those things, right? But we were playing some mainstream pop and some crossover things, and we didn't want people to be misled who our competitors were. So we called it Progressive Urban. The music was progressive. The ideas were progressive. The talent was progressive. Everything was progressive.
I'm glad that you talk about progression and long-term sustainability, because that is one of the key things we are saying to entrepreneurs. You have to be in it for the long run. You're not looking at it as a quick buck for tomorrow. That is not entrepreneurship, right? There must be some long-term vision, some long-term planning and sustainability to go along with your idea while you're fleshing out the opportunity.
I like how he mentioned, where Signal mentioned that progressive was part of the vision, the mission, the tag, the everything was progressive, you know? But another thing you mentioned there, Signal, that I just briefly wanted to ask you on, when you mentioned the Facebook and the digital strategy. There's a debate now in terms of whether broadcasts should follow a digital strategy, let the digital strategy guide their content, guide their broadcast strategy. There's one that say they should be in balance, it should be in sync. How do you view it?
Well, the first thing you have to recognize is evolution will rule everything, right? And you can't fight evolution. Change is constant. So you either join in, you move out of the way, or you die, right? So how do we as media, fit in or evolve with that whole digital movement and so on? I believe you need to have a hybrid approach to it. But again, it requires a long-term strategy. You have to know where you want to be in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years. Do you want to remain as a media company, or do you intend to shut down in 3 years or 5 years? That's the first question you have to answer, and that will help you to determine what you do and how you plan for your future. So if you know that you want to be here for the next 10 to 15 years, then you need to start transitioning your product or tweaking your product, as the case may be. For me, I have always thought about, and I'm yet to still do it properly, but I'm trying to get there. I would like to have a hybrid approach to our station where you actually have influencers online that are not even on the air.
Okay. I'm sure sell out your secrets there, but go ahead.
That's fine. I mean, it's happening in the world right now, right?
Nice.
Right? But we need to find ourselves get ourselves in front of the faces of that next generation. And the only way to do it is to use strategies that they are using now, but be more innovative with it. So one of the things we're doing is we're also looking at hiring persons who live in that world.
Right.
Mm-hmm. They don't live in our traditional world at all. They live in that world. So all the ideas, the thinking, everything will be of that digital domain. as we see it.
Social. My research has felt like you're on the right track because that's exactly what the companies have been trying to do. Try to build that digital person to work alongside with the broadcast person because it has to work hand in hand. As I say, you're moving into the future. We're not moving into the past, and we are already at a certain point right now. So I just have one more question. If you could if you allow me, just bring it.
No, man. This is great.
No, I am enjoying it. So question is just coming to me. How does one, for instance, the radio business is built on advertising, but yet now with the digital again, the podcast listener is one who does not like advertising. How do you get that balance? Because when they listen to the radio and there are these, let me say, 5-minute blocks of ads, it could turn off the podcast listener. So is that something you consider? Is that something even you can even deal with? Because again, it's your revenue, right?
And I will go even further into that question because it's actually the last one I had here as well. Not just for podcast listeners, but music lovers. I mean, the way music and content is being consumed now, even movies, Netflix, all these things. You're just hitting that skip button on YouTube, Spotify, wherever once an ad come up. So, as Stuart said, what is the opportunity? How are we going to be agile and be able to innovate to really satisfy, again, the people who really pay the bills, which is the market?
Well, there are revenue models for that. They already exist. That's the good thing about it, right? There is subscription-based. You could have a subscription-based model for digital where there's no advertising per se, but you pay a subscription to consume the content that you love, right? Mm-hmm. And so on. So there is that model. You could also have a dual approach to that. You could also have a model where it is free, but it comes with ads. So basically, you give any consumer choice in terms of that. You could have streaming. Spotify. If you study Spotify, and I did some research on Spotify over the years and so on, Spotify is the prime example of what a modern radio station should become. They have some revenue models and they keep innovating that will creating things that will blow your mind, right? In terms of their revenue models. So again, you can generate revenue if you study the market properly and you really study your audience. I always say that the audience is important. So what we do with some of our radio stations, like we have a talk radio station right now, and we record a lot of the conversations sometimes. And although they are on the radio where ads are run and so on, we will have a production team in the background that will edit out all the ads, all the bad thing, all the mistakes and so on. And we put it up as a podcast. We can then resell that with either a pre-roll, what you might call a pre-roll, which is like a intro, right, with a sponsor, or an outtake, which is a post-roll or mid-roll. And you see that all the time in YouTube and thing, when you go to click on something, you see an ad for 15 seconds or 10 seconds or 8 seconds and so on. So we broadcast those things because the content that we have on that station is very valuable. We have content with Pastor Pandy, right, out of last year and stuff and thing. UN Ambassador, this World Day, this one, that one, and so on. Very, very valuable content, right? So we have found a hybrid way to still make it work where you have sponsorship for it on radio and you could still double that sponsorship on digital if you edit out those ads. Or the client could buy both. The client could decide, what I'm taking for this entire package.
Yes.
Well, you see why I was so excited to bring on this man?
Yeah.
This is really, as I told you before, it's our go-to now.
The man take over the show.
You hear the knowledge this man dropped tonight?
And he not only dropping knowledge about media and marketing, branding and all these things, but all the entrepreneurial topics that we wanted to cover in this episode. We have definitely covered those and a lot more in terms of putting together your team, building your brand, capitalizing on opportunity from environmental scanning, from a hobby to business, passion-driven creativity, building your brand to be able to...
Stakeholder
relations, partnership relations, building your brand so that investors could be interested in how to manage that situation, business planning, not only for the short term, but for the long term. They might even talk about SWOT analysis. You know, I wasn't expecting.
I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to bring it up.
But Signal, indeed, it was a pleasure. I mean, we really don't even want to wrap it up here. Stuart have about 4 pages of notes just from
Literally.
So definitely we going to have you back on once all things go well with your schedule and so on coming up. We would love to have you back on. But in terms of wrapping up, anything you would like to leave with our audience tonight in terms of as we're talking about entrepreneurship and business development, you already outlined a lot of things, but anything you want to leave them with in particular for the next generation?
And key for the younger generation.
Well, you know, it's a constant message that is given by a lot of people. Follow your dream, but in following your dream, right, make sure that you could educate yourself or pursue it to the highest level so that you could maximize it. You know, like, you know, sometimes a mechanic might be a mechanic. He may have started fixing bicycles and then graduated to becoming a mechanic and then graduated to fixing plane, then rocket engines, to become a rocket engine scientist or whatever and so on. So, you know, follow your dream to its highest potential, right? And that's the only way you would know how big your dream, how much you can recognize your dream and realize your dream and so on. You know, don't be afraid of failure. Failure is the greatest teacher. Failure.
Said that last episode.
If I do something and I don't fail at it, sometimes I get worried. Because I don't see the mistakes. I don't see things, you know, and unless there's somebody there to see it for me, you know, I feel uncomfortable. When my team says this is great, I say, no, something wrong. I need to get here. I need to get feedback from somebody else.
Too many yes men on their team. Never good.
Yes, you know. And I'll tell you the other thing, I've encouraged my team to really debate me. Kendell, you know that.
Yeah.
My team, right? I create that openness so that they could speak freely and have these debates with me over the content, over the ideas, over music, whatever it is they feel to talk about and so on. Because if you don't create that openness, right, and that opportunity for them to do that, you will never get the best of them, and the feedback will always be the wrong feedback.
Well, again, innovation comes in close quarters among teams, right?
Correct.
So it has to be that way.
Perfect. Yeah. So never be afraid of the conversation. Never be afraid to discuss your ideas. Never be afraid to take feedback. And of course, as we said last week, don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. It's all business. Mr. Joel Morris, business leader. And after tonight, watch me. When I see you in the hallway tomorrow, I definitely need to give you a special shake on because you really brought it here tonight. And we definitely very grateful for that. Thanks so much for being on the Big Potato Podcast.
Yeah, it was a pleasure having you. It was a pleasure having you. I think we could bestow a PhD on you. The amount of information that he was passing out there. No, it really was a pleasure. It really was a pleasure. I think the audience would have picked up a lot of insightful information. And whenever you are available again, we're here to chat.
I'm always available to share my knowledge and share my information and share my story. I think it's important. Thank you guys for having me. And I think this Big Potato Podcast, it is different. Let me tell you guys that, right? I didn't know what to expect. So I see big things for this podcast. Guys, keep it up. Stay with it.
We're coming from you.
We appreciate
coming from you. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's big words.
Thank you.
All right. So Signal, thanks very much and good night.
And all the best in all your future endeavors.
Thanks a lot, guys. Good night.
All the best. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Big Potato Podcast. Yours truly, Kendell and Stuart. We are signing out until next time. Remember to follow us on all social media platforms at the Big Potato Podcast. And if you have any feedback about this episode, you can also reach us out on email at thebigpotatopodcast@gmail.com.
I just want to thank you all for tuning in again. I think this was an excellent episode. I think you all would have picked up a lot of gems. And yeah, check us out on the social media. Subscribe via the email to get the premium content. And see you in the next episode.
See you guys.
Entrepreneurship, it's all game. The Big Potato Podcast is yours to claim. From startups to scaling up, we cover it all. So don't mess up. Monday nights, don't miss the show with Kendell and Stuart. Your time to grow, listen up. Take notes and learn. The Big Potato Podcast, next gen's turn.